2011 was the last time Ohio football played in the MAC championship game in Detroit. The hope is 2014 is the year the Bobcats win their first MAC title since 1968. And all the thoughts start at MAC Media Day at Ford Field in the D. Welcome to it. I'm Russ Eisenstein. Rob Cornelius is alongside. Time to get to it. Ohio picked third in the MAC East, Robsy.
Yeah, man, really a hard lead to figure this year, Russ. As I've said before this call, you look at the league and you say to yourself, who would you put on the front of a MAC magazine media guide for the preseason? No one in particular. There aren't a lot of stars. Most of them graduated or took off. And the obvious leaders this year, BG and Northern, are teams you look at history. Right now, this league's wide open.
Yeah, BG expected to win the MAC East. Toledo expected to win the MAC West. We'll talk about those respective polls coming up. First, from a Bobcat standpoint, I liken this football season to that of Bobcat basketball 2013-2014. In that season, the big stars, the winning stars, were gone. There still were great pieces there, but what was Ohio going to do without DJ Cooper, Walt Offit, and the rest? In this case, in 2014 for Bobcat football, Tyler Tettleton's gone, Bo Blankenship's gone, Dante Foster gone, Travis Carey gone. I think that's a comparison that we'll look back on and say, you know what, there are pieces here, but it is very similar.
Yep, a lot of yardage, a lot of years of experience missing, especially off that Ohio offense that doesn't return a ton of starters. But Ohio defense, something you can build around. If Ohio can figure out how to score after the first couple weeks of this season, they're right in this MAC race.
Yeah, the yardage balance was off where it was a positive for Ohio in the 2 years prior. Last year they were outgained, and particularly at the end of the season. The end of the season was tough. The hope is that you can regenerate that offensive power with the players that are coming back and the new faces.
No, and I think this team is certainly going to be a lot more run heavy. Frank Solich intimated that earlier today. Daz Patterson, the guy. You're going to see some big, heavier load fullback types running the ball, some new faces, and in Darius Vick, a guy who's more likely to keep on the option, on the read option stuff, than maybe Tyler Tettleton was toward the end of his career.
And Darius got a jump on this season with a pretty good performance, certainly a serviceable performance in the bowl game loss to East Carolina.
No, and he's a guy who, for being a backup and a brand new sort of guy who has put some pretty good stuff on some tape over the last couple seasons, wants to be a leader, realizes his own personal numbers are incredibly unimportant. There are some really good leaders on this team. I think Coach Solich believes that.
3 of the 5 guys that are starting on the offensive line most likely are guys that have had a lot of starts before. The right side is a little start light, but hopefully that can gel, and this offense is only going to be as good as the offensive line allows it to be.
Yeah, you look at the O-line, technically only a couple starters back, but you have at least 7 guys who have starts or starter minutes experience to wrap around on this thing. Right side of concern, but again, it's easier to run block than it is to pass block. In an early season, they'll have to get the run game going.
The good news is on the defensive side of the ball, you've got mainstays and guys that have made some big plays up front, in the middle, and on the back end. You could run through a list of guys that have had contributions. The defense, they could be pretty salty.
Well, Basham's going to be a star if he isn't already. The video has proved that. Casey Sales, a lot of young guys, a lot of experience on that front line. You have 9 legitimate players to fill the 4 defensive line spots, the 4 down line spots. Ohio's deeper there than they probably have been ever, at least going back to maybe that 06 team.
Yeah, Javon Johnson in the middle, and then Devin Bass and Josh Kristoff on the back end too. I think it's pretty formidable. Special teams might have some changes as well, but you look at Josiah Yazdani. He's been Mr. Reliable from the Hocking Hills, hasn't he?
No, fantastic story. Local kid out of Alexander, out of Albany, out in the western part of Athens County. A guy who walked on all of a sudden is one of the best kickers in this league. Good distance, good accuracy, and a fantastic soccer player for the red and white.
So we take a look at the MAC predictions now from the assembled media. And in the East, we'll start. It's Bowling Green up top, Akron and Ohio the top 3. Buffalo, Kent State, Miami, and UMass. I think the bottom 2 are a distant bottom 2. I think you could jumble a lot of 2, 3, 4, and 5 together. At this time, it looks like Bowling Green is most certainly the favorite in the league. That might be a little distance away from Akron and Ohio.
Yeah, agreed top to bottom. Miami and UMass are in full Control-Alt-Delete mode right now. They're going to have to start figuring things out. But Kent and Buffalo, Kent's seemed to have had Ohio's number for a lot of the last 6 or 7 years. Buffalo team breaking in, a team with a lot fewer stars than one you saw last year. Akron, a team folks thought was maybe 2 wins better last season, had a near miss with Marshall, had a lot of other near misses, but played very very well down the stretch at the end of the season. But you're right, not a ton of difference 2 through 5. And for number 1 Bowling Green, you come in with all these votes, a new coach, a lot of talent on paper. But the question is, can you maintain? Can you flip over to your new system with no hiccups whatsoever? And we've seen that be a problem in this league when teams have had very successful leave behinds not necessarily work out.
The prevailing logic about the MAC has been it's been a high power, big point, big yard sort of deal. If you take a look at the last couple of years, with the exception of a couple teams, it really hasn't been that prolific. Bowling Green's going to try. If you take a look at what Dino Babers did at Eastern Illinois with the amount of yards and points that they had, if they could bring that to the MAC, it could be the resurgence of the air raid that we saw for many years in this conference.
Well, it's all differential between O and D, and he inherits on paper and probably on the field the best defense in this league. The numbers bear that out over the last 2 seasons.
Quickly on the flip side to the Western Division, Toledo, Northern Illinois, Ball State, Central Michigan, Western Michigan, and Eastern Michigan. The crossover games that the Bobcats will play: Northern Illinois in a blackout game in November, on the road to Michigan twice, Central Michigan and Western Michigan. Your thoughts on the MAC West?
Interesting. Toledo, Northern, not sure. Really think Toledo was a little better than their record and results showed last year. We'll see if Northern can maintain their spot in the top couple over there. But for Ohio, tougher run, tougher games in the West. 3 games in the West. That's a little bit more difficult in Ohio. Again, somehow misses Toledo. Haven't seen those guys in forever.
Yeah, from a BG standpoint, we talked about what they have coming back on the eastern side. The same thing on the western side. The 2 teams that played in the championship game last year. How's Northern going to be without Jordan Lynch? Obviously a big-time production player for them. That's going to change some things. We'll see how they fare. They come into Peden Stadium for hopefully what will be a big ball game in November. It's July. Still a long way to go even before the start of the season, but Media Day starts it all off for our 7th year together, Rob.
Yep, a lot of folks here, a lot of good information we can share with you hopefully this fall.
That wraps up our coverage of Football Media Day in the Mid-American Conference for 2014. For Tanner Smith and the entire Bobcat TV crew, and for my partner Rob Cornelius, I'm Russ Eisenstein. This is Bobcat TV.